Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. It's Matt Cook here with Jonathan Green. I am a relationship and sex researcher with over 700,000 subscribers. And Jonathan was probably the most famous dating coach in the world prior to retiring to a remote tropical island. And here we are every week being very entertaining, I hope, and giving you some very, very bad advice. So I have a question for you, Jonathan.
Okay.
So we're going to do a little mixed thing this week. We got a little bit about some interesting things Jonathan's been looking into, and we have a collection of things that have come from some of my students who have an all access pass to our material, and also some other things that we saw on the internets. So, should I consider raising a child with my ex? That's the question. Do you think
No,
that a man should consider raising a child with his ex? What do you think about
no,
that? No,
absolutely not.
absolutely not.
If sorry, I'm assuming they don't already have a child. So if this is
They
we
have a
don't
child.
have a
There's a
child.
child. There is a child.
Oh, no, that's different. So if is he the father?
Yeah, he's a father.
So he had a child with his ex. The child is
Then
already
they
born.
then
And the
they
question,
broke up, and now he's thinking, well, we get along pretty well, you know. In fact, they said they had sex like 3 times the past week. They're exes, right? But maybe they should sort of stay together in some way for the
oh,
raising the daughter.
sorry.
It seems, yeah,
Um. Okay, now I understand it better. I thought you were like, let's just have. I'm gonna ask my ex to have a baby and raise it. That's what I
right.
thought you meant.
That would
So
be a terrible idea.
yeah, but we already have a. Well,
Yeah,
number one, you should raise your child for sure.
yeah,
So the number one indicator for like childhood success is father in the home. So obviously that's really important. I'm a big believer in that. I believe that if you have a kid, you should raise the kid. Certainly that's a big part of my life. However, we get a lot of questions from guys who are like, "Oh, we have sex once a year. We haven't had sex in 20 years." 3 times a week? That sounds like a great relationship, right? That sounds like better than a lot of the people that message in. So, it doesn't really sound like an ex. And this is something I like to talk about a lot is that we break up with people, but it's very easy to have sex with someone again once you've already had sex with them, right? That's why it's easier to
yeah,
sleep with an ex than a new person. So
right.
it would come down to why did you break up? Did he say why? Like what the problem was? Because it sounds like a normal we get along, we want to raise a kid together, we're sleeping together. That sounds like a great relationship.
Well, what I think that I get from this, he says that we feel comfortable with each other. I feel that way with her. She feels that way with me. And I see so much online about, how it's not healthy to be around exes. Exes are exes for a reason. There's a negative attitude about my situation. But maybe, he says, these people may not have the emotional maturity or empathy to understand. Maybe they've had bad
Oh no,
experiences with exes.
that's a stupid thing to say. You should never say I'm the one exception. This has failed 1,000 times, but I'm the one person who will get it right. That's the math is against you. That's the law of big numbers. There's no way that's true. So I disagree with that part. So if he saying we would live together but be exes and raise a kid, but I would date other people outside the home. He's basically suggesting, is this the reverse way of suggesting an open relationship? Is that what the result would be? Is that
Kind
we're
of backing
and
into it.
I've never heard it from this direction. So if he's suggesting, so here's what I think is okay. You want to be the parent, but you don't live in the home, fine, right? You're exes, but you're still raising someone you absolutely should. You have a responsibility. That's the baseline.
Yeah,
If he's saying we move back in together and we're sleeping together and we're raising a kid together and we're the parents of the kid, well, that is a relationship, right?
yeah, that's right.
If you're saying I do a mix of where I'm living with them, but I'm sleeping with someone outside the home, I guarantee you that will end in disaster because you cannot have it, you never have it even, right? One of you will always get more dates or have
Yeah,
feel like the other person's having more freedom than you. One of
right.
you will get jealous. I don't know which one of you it will be. It could just as easily be him as her. But when you have a relationship that's unevenly yoked, if you feel this, maybe it's more common to look at this. Let's say like when bands break up, they always go, "Well, I wrote all the songs." So if someone feels like they're doing more work than the other person, they always say that.
Yeah,
And that's what will happen here. You're going on dates while I'm doing parenting. That's what the fight will be.
yes,
Or you start to create a lot of rules. The rules will be like you can date whoever you want, but they can never come over to the house, or the kids
right.
can't find like you'll have these rules because
That's okay.
while while it seems cool now, when you're when you're the parents at like school find out, then you'll feel one of you will feel like a cuckold. I don't know if can a woman be a cuckold too? Does the word go in both directions? If a woman's like, "Oh yeah, that's my husband, but he also has a girlfriend," you're starting to create. It's very hard to have this and it not infect your entire life, right? Not have people
Remember,
find out
Facebook used
about
to
how
have a relationship category. It's
it's
complicated.
complicated.
Yeah, they took it away.
Yeah,
I thought that was great.
it
Well,
just means we're not.
I'll tell you what I told him. I told him that I think it's a great idea. In his situation, he can raise the daughter. They can have some kind of relationship. It's much more mature. My parents got divorced and they were always at each other's throats and hated each other and fought in court. And I think what
Okay.
he's doing is way better for this girl, this young little girl. And he's, it is possible to have a relationship with somebody, isn't it? Where you could have maybe let's say a casual sexual relationship if they're your ex and maybe you both see other people, but maybe you don't live together. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. So I definitely think he should definitely be a father.
Right.
It's a little bit, the rest of it's a little bit complicated because you have to know a lot more details. But overall, the best choice is in an ideal world, you both
Yeah.
live in the home, you have a healthy relationship. And it sounds
Right.
like they do.
It
Like,
could
I'm
be.
not sure
Could be.
why this is your ex. I haven't heard any reason why they're not still together.
People
They're
can
supposed
get
to be
back
together.
together. I said that too. I know there's a number of people who have gotten married again to the same
I
person and they're
never,
happy. Sometimes you just grow and then you say, that
I,
person really is really right for me. I just
I
wasn't
can't,
mature enough at the time.
I can't wrap my head around that. Where you hate someone enough to divorce them and then love them enough to get married again.
Maybe
And
you
I know
don't
what
hate
happened.
them. Maybe you don't hate them, but maybe you're just a bad person at that time. Maybe you drink too much or some other thing. And,
Maybe,
you
okay,
know,
so I have never had an amicable breakup. So
yeah.
I don't have that as a reference point. I know some guys are like I'm friends with all my exes. I'm like I can't even imagine. I
Hmm.
don't think I have an ex that doesn't hate me. Even when they break up with me, it's how it is. Like and also so that's just my universe. However, I know that it exists, but I don't have the experience for that particular thing just because in the same way a lot of people like they'll be like, "Oh, I'm married, but my best friend is a different woman." I don't do that. Like the only woman I'm friends with is my wife.
I'm going to speculate, though, that this woman, she didn't have another relationship after they broke up because she has this baby and a little girl, and it's hard and she's a mother and it's a struggle. And, I'm
They
thinking
don't
that. So
sound that
maybe,
broken up.
well, not
They
anymore.
sound pretty together. Like,
Yeah, I really
I mean,
like this trend of people that are friendly enough and amicable enough when they're split up to raise a
so
child I think that's a
this
wonderful thing.
this brings a question I want to ask you. Sometimes, in fact, a lot of people will say, "My wife is my best friend."
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I think it's great. In fact, marriage has sort of evolved, and it's involved in three stages. The first stage, and this is the most of our history as humanity, is an economic unit where we could survive because you couldn't survive as a single man or single woman on your own. You would die. You couldn't do it. So then the economics of it was really the determinant of it, and then marriage moved into a love thing in the probably the 19th century, where people would marry because they loved each other. Hopefully, they would get to love each other before, but not necessarily. Nobody cared that much. But then it became a thing that if you love somebody and all of this. But now marriage is a little different. When I say marriage, I also mean any kind of serious relationship. And it's more about self realization and self actualization together. Like, what can you do to, as you're moving through life to where you are, to who you really think you are? How can that be made better, quicker, faster with someone else? So it's kind of a thing where you can each help, grow the other person. And so I think they should be your best friend in order to self-realize and self-actualize. I think that's very healthy.
Yeah. So my experience, this is why I want to ask it, is usually when people say that, it means that they have one of those
Uh-oh.
marriages
Uh-oh.
where they've lost all their other friends. Like a lot of people, they get so into their
Oh,
marriage, they don't have any other friends. And so the default, because most men, we don't make friends after college. We just stop. We don't make new
yeah.
friends. We don't form new connections. We live more isolated. So then when the marriage doesn't work out, you haven't just lost your partner, you've also lost your only friend. That's
Yeah.
why I'm asking
And
that
you
question
have
because
no more social life because you got rid of it. You left them behind. Well, it's interesting
yeah,
because there's some studies on this that show that married couples used to spend much more time with friends and family when they were married than when they were single. But in the last 25 years, it's changed. And married people tend to be more like they're just together with each other and they tend to exclude friends and family once they get married, much more than they
now
used to.
that's interesting. Why do you think that shift happened?
I think it's because of all of the solo activities that we have with the internet, with things like, just spending time on our phones and all of that. I thought about it. I think it has to do with that. And that's edged out the times that we used to just hang out with each other. Everyone just used to, what are we going to do today, dear? Let's hang out with your brother-in-law. Let's hang out with, they don't do that because they got something else going, which is kind of sad, but that's the reality of it.
Okay. Because I'm always thinking about my situation. I live very remotely. So we have other families that we're friendly with,
Yeah,
but I don't really like doing couples events or other things.
right,
I don't like to do any of those things. So one of the things about being an expat is that the pool of people you can be friends with is very small.
right.
And what you find is that people you'd be friends with abroad, you would never be friends or ever talk to them back home.
Yeah,
So it's the desert island effect, right? If you're trapped in design with another person, they become very attractive because they're your only option. Your mind will shift. In the same way, this is the only person I'd be friends with, might as well. So I just think about that. My situation is a little bit unique, but I noticed that like first time I lived in Japan with a bunch of people from college, we were all really close that summer. As soon as we went back to college, we never
right.
spoke to each other again. We
Well,
wouldn't have gotten along normally, with nothing in
hmm.
common. So,
Well, I tell
I'm,
you what, though, like my daughter went to some things even in high school, some
mhm.
things where you go away for a while, school things and whatnot, and she still talks to those people and is still friends with them, some of them, many many years later. So I guess it depends on the person, but I have noticed
Well,
that with men, I like to have friends. I don't relate to most people. I don't like most people. I would rather be with my wife than with most people. So that's the to your point about
well, that's
I've,
that's why I
however,
was.
I have made friends and I make an effort to make friends, but I find that other men are not interested in friendship particularly. And even when we have a
Yes.
shared activity or whatever, they don't make an effort. I'm the only one. And when I'm the one that calls somebody, after a while, I just say, well, you know what? You got to call me and initiate something or else we're done, which
Yeah.
I don't believe in it one
Yeah,
sided.
that's the thing about men's friendships is that it's tricky. A lot of times, the other guy's thinking, "Oh, Richard's." The other guy's thinking Matt's in charge, or Jonathan's in charge, or Tommy's in charge. The other guy's in charge of when we hang out, so he'll call me when he wants to hang out. So you start to develop a alpha beta relationship. Like, oh, it's not that I don't want to hang out with you. I just know you're in charge of deciding when we hang
Yeah, I'm
out.
just waiting for you to call me. Right.
And
Exactly.
you're thinking, hey, he never calls me back. And he's thinking, "Oh, I haven't heard from Matt in ages." So
Yeah.
that's why it's interesting. So I I saw this video which I thought was amazing. This woman transitioned, became a guy, had a beard,
Mm.
very convincing, and she was like, "It's so lonely. No one wants to be friends with me." And I was like, "Welcome,
Well, that's
welcome."
very
I
interesting.
don't,
Yeah, the
I don't like.
isolation of being a man.
I don't want to be. I really don't like making new friends. I have very little interest in that. I
Isn't it like
spend
dating? It's kind of unpleasant, but you have to do it if you want to get an end result. Most
well,
people don't like dating either.
if you have a shared activity, it's okay, but I don't really have like I don't play golf.
Yeah,
So if I play golf, I would have a golf buddy. That would make sense. Most of the time, I'm either working or with my kids. And I'm with my kids way more than I'm with my wife. So most of the time, I'm working or with my kids, and then I'm with my wife a little bit. Just how I have 4 kids. There's more kids than wives for now. So that's how I divide up my day. But most of the things other dads want to do to me
I have no
are
interest
not
in that. I never
fun.
did.
And
I never
also,
did.
it's always that decision making calculus. Do you want to do this instead of spending time with your kids?
Yeah, well,
And when I think,
exactly. So that's how I feel about with my wife. I like to spend time with her. I don't really care to spend time with people that I don't really enjoy being with. So my friends tend to
Mhm.
be people that come out of the business world
Me too.
that I'm somewhat in. Yeah, and I like those people because we're both relatable. I can relate to them, and I'm not really interested in relating to somebody. Like, what do guys talk about mostly? Sports. I don't really have an interest in sports.
God,
I don't.
is that
What
what
do
they
they
talk
really?
about?
I
That's
guess.
or Cigar. It's so funny. It's like we don't know what men like cigars, whiskey.
I
What is
don't
so?
know.
Most of the things, like I here's one of the things that I'm really guilty of this. I often don't think people are as good a dad as me, so I don't want to be around them.
Ah, you have a silent
Which
criticism or judgment about their
it's
fatherhood
not like
abilities.
yeah. So a lot of people because a lot of people like choose. I'll give you a small example. I go to every time my kids are invited to a birthday party, I go. I'm one of the few dads that goes to them. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm the only dad there, but I feel like it's important to be there. I try to be there for all my kids' big events. Um, my kids travel a lot because they do martial arts tournaments, and some of them are very far away, so I can't go. This weekend we went to one. We had to ride a boat for half an hour, then a van 4 hours there. Stay in a real rough hotel. This town has no good hotels in it. Tournament at the mall, whole thing. And the entire amount of time, so it was 2 days with all this travel, that much travel back. The entire amount of time my kids were doing anything that I was watching was maybe 12 minutes because the events are very short.
Well, you were
But
with them though
my,
the rest of the time, right? I mean, that's
yeah,
the in the
I
van or
had a,
whatever.
right. So for me, I was like, I'm so lucky that I'm in a position where I can miss this much work, spend this much time with my kids, everything's coming together. And I mean, it was great. I'm going, I
Well,
haven't, normally I don't go because they're really far away, but I like really, my youngest son was doing it for the first time. I was like, I'm really going to make an effort. It's really a challenge. So I went,
this
and
puts
because, they're going with all weekend, it's
a kind
great.
of a question mark. They always used to talk about quality time, but what you're talking about is realistic. It's just time. I don't think there is such a thing. I mean, quality time happens when you put the quantity in there, right? I mean, you can't. That's what's ridiculous about quality time. You just spend time,
Yeah,
you
like
hang out. What happens, happens, right?
deep conversations. Yeah. So my older son, he's the only one who won. So he was fighting another kid. They're wearing all the armor and stuff, and I mean, he wrecked this kid. He won by so many points. It was great. He won like 50-30, and my wife by the third round, because you fight 3 rounds, and it's all you can see the points on the wall, and the other kid did win the second round, but then my son won the first and third rounds by a wide margin of points. And my wife is like shouting. I'm recording it. My wife is shouting all sorts of stuff, so I can't share the recording. She's like, "Knock him out." I'm like, "Not. They're eight. Let's not." But she's getting excited.
Yeah, I
And then
know.
my son, he wins. He gets a gold medal because he won the tournament. Comes over to me, takes his helmet off. He goes, "Is that what you wanted, Dad?" I go, "Yes, that's exactly what I wanted. That was great." And I finally you always hear about like dance moms and parents that are overly involved in their kids' thing.
Yeah,
Man, watching your kid win is a good because I've won
I,
tournament. I
I I
did the same
coach
thing when I was
baseball. I coached
feels
baseball
good.
for my son when he was,
Yeah,
7 or 8 or whatever. And I would just say that I did find the parents really go overboard and are ridiculous,
yeah. Baseball's
annoying,
notorious for that.
annoying.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, we were standing next to people who were cheering for the other kid, like their other friends that
yeah.
were kids, and I was like, afterwards, I almost said something like, "That's what happens." Like, I didn't say anything, but you almost said something too far, like to start shouting at other kids, like because they're cheering against your kid when they're cheering for their friend, and that's just how you see it. Which is like, I didn't say anything, but and so when
I would cheer them. I would cheer their kid if he felt he was
but
the
I've
underdog. You know.
Yeah. And then the other kid who beat my youngest son, when another kid beat that kid, I was cheering for that kid. I was like, yeah, get revenge for Mike. You get into it.
Yeah, I know you
But
get into it.
a lot of dads I know are missing. They'll go out and do like a solo activity, like, oh, I'm gonna go play golf by myself, not even with buddies, instead of spending time with my kid. And I'll be honest, I really look down on that.
I don't think you play golf by yourself because generally they put you in
Well,
a
it's not
foursome.
golf. I don't want to say the specific
Oh,
activities because I don't want to get too specific, but I
like
know
fishing.
parents
Well,
who
we
will go do a solo activity
yeah.
rather.
Yeah, they'll go like guys will go drinking it with their buddies or something like that. I would say is common enough, right? When they're away from their families, that's a
That yeah,
very
at least
common
it's a
thing.
nighttime activity. But I mean, like during the day, like on a Saturday, instead of spending time with my kids, I'm gonna go do something else. And it's like, well, I don't want to be that kind of dad.
I don't
To
either.
me,
Yeah.
I when I think of, I just think that being there is really important for all of my kids, being around a lot as much as I can. I
Yeah.
regret. that I'm not there all the time, that I work part of the day. Like I wish I did, but you have to, it's like you also have to show them that part of life, that working and responsibility and stuff. So I know it's important, but the thought of being like, oh, I'm gonna go do this and that. Like my wife and I are going on vacation next month for like 7 or 8 days. And I guarantee you by day three, we'll be like missing the kids. And then the day we get
You'll
home,
be
we're like, we
talking
should have
about the
stayed
kids
longer.
all the time.
And then as soon as you get back, you're like, we should have stayed longer. These kids are so
Yeah, I
annoying.
know.
That's
I
how it
know.
always
It's a
is.
bittersweet. It's so interesting. Well, I
So,
have a
but
question for you that
yes.
came up to discuss. This is a shift in topic completely.
Okay.
Um, so if a guy pleasures himself, okay, in a relationship, is that his girlfriend or his wife's business? That's kind of the question that he asked me.
When a question is that broad, it's hard to know the answer.
Well, I'll say they've been together a
Like,
couple
if
years,
she did, is she
right?
in the room?
Well, okay. So he says I started this a couple times a week because we were, he said a break from intimacy while she deals with childhood trauma, which I supported. Okay, so they're in a period of abstinence. That's the key point
So,
here. And then she
okay.
overheard me, I guess he was loud doing it or whatever,
What?
confronted me, accusing me of being a terrible boyfriend for not supporting her by
Wait,
abstaining from that activity.
sorry, is it wife or girlfriend?
Girlfriend. But I've heard
So
the
he has
same
to,
thing. Many men have told me the similar stories, not with the trauma, but their wives are really upset when they're doing that or that they found out they're doing that. It's very common, and I never understood it.
so this is different. That's why I like to hear the whole story. So if it's an enforced abstinence, like, oh, you won't sleep with me, so and no one can sleep with me. I always, you have to establish early on what the boundaries are. And I would just say,
Yeah,
listen, part of relationship is intimacy. If I'm not going to get it from you, you have two choices. I can get it from someone else, or I can do this. You can't, like, to tell me that I have to. Also, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there that I'm not really into. Like, she's reliving a childhood trauma, and I've agreed to. I don't fully understand that part of it. That sounds very strange to me.
yeah.
Whenever I hear,
Why do you support her in this? Like, I don't get
yeah,
that. If
that
she's,
sounds
I don't
very
know.
That sounds very suspicious, like something's going on that's not gonna, he's not gonna like the end of the story.
Well,
I'm not
she says they already broke up, living separately. She says that he has to apologize, stop that self-pleasuring business, and seek therapy for what she believes is an addiction.
So let's talk about addiction, because I think that's the first thing. A lot of people don't understand what a porn addiction is, what the spectrum is. I know guys who are pleasuring more than 20 times a day.
No way. At this stage,
Oh yeah.
hmm,
Yeah.
that I would say that's
That's
a
addiction.
severe problem. That's a problem.
Right. So like that one you're sure it's an addiction, right? I mean, I do have to wonder, why was it? Maybe he heard like the laptop, because if you heard the guy just by himself, what are you doing that's so noisy?
I was thinking that too. I'm not groaning and
Because if
moaning.
he's just going,
So
"Oh
yeah,
yeah, daddy," like that's crazy.
yeah,
Because like,
yeah,
but I'm assuming she heard the laptop. So I think that she has a whole bunch of mental health problems because she's got
yeah.
a childhood trauma thing, which mental health
And she's
problems
trying to
she's
be
going
very
through.
controlling. And my point of this is this: if I'm in a
Yeah.
relationship and I choose to do that, I'm a grown man. That's my business. It's not her business. I don't care if it's marriage or girlfriend. If I choose to do
Oh,
that, that's my business. I don't
so
believe that's any of her business.
yeah, well, here's my perspective on that because my wife catches me all the time.
Hmm.
So when one of the first things about when you work from home is that becomes a huge issue is right.
Yeah,
There's this
there's been
amazing
some
comedy sketch
there's been
20
some
years ago when a
interesting
guy,
things about that with the COVID, reveal
yeah,
on
this
Zoom
guy
when people didn't
goes,
know.
this amazing comedy sketch from England like 20 years ago, and a guy goes, "Oh, my husband works from home too," and they introduce wives introduce the husband. The husband goes, "How do you deal with all the wanking?" He's like, "I know, I can't, it's like I can't get any work done," and it's because it's such an honest thing to say is that when you're
Yeah,
home, you have no responsibilities, and
yeah,
my wife will catch me and always want to join and try and turn other stuff. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to get it done quickly so I can get back to work.
yeah,
If I do stuff with you, it takes longer, it's messier because then I got to go take a shower. Then you have to air out the room, and
yeah.
bad. So that's why I don't always want that. But she'll,
Yeah.
and sometimes she'll just want to like be a helper. So that's what I thought you meant. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, she's
Yeah.
involved, but she would get mad if it was like I was looking at like pictures of her mom or sister or something, like, right? Like then she would be upset.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
that's part of, or if like you're looking, that's part of it. If you're looking at something that's really extreme, like we've talked about, then
Right.
that's part of the spectrum. Is like, what are you looking at? I always just tell I'm just imagining her. It's just the best thing to say when just be
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm just imagining you. Um, but this situation has a lot of other moving parts. Whenever someone starts talking about, I have a childhood trauma, so then I have to punish you. Masturbating once, I don't think is worthy of therapy. You'll be lucky, you'll be very hard pressed to find a therapist who will accept you as a patient when you go, what's your problem? I masturbated once. Get out. I
I
help people.
discussed this with a therapist once, actually, many, many years ago. And he said his wife had been upset when she finally was doing that, and then they just talked about it. But he didn't know why she was upset either. I mean, he thought it was kind of stupid.
Well, I do.
Um,
I know exactly why they get upset. Why am I not enough for you? That's exactly
yeah,
the
but
reason
the
why.
fact is that men have a strong sex. Well, there's two reasons. Number one,
I'm
men
just
have
like
a
women and
strong.
men see it differently. I'm not telling you that it's right, but a
Okay.
woman says,
Okay.
however, if a woman's going, I should be enough for you, but I'm also not going to give you any intimacy, then that's crazy. Now you're into the realm of no, no, no.
Right.
My wife
Right.
has a legitimate argument because my wife is down. If I was like 4 times a day, that's what we used to do until I made her stop because it
Hmm.
was killing
Hmm.
me. I was slowly dying like a vampire's familiar. But that's a different thing of I'm not going to sleep with you and
Bled
you're not allowed.
dry. Poor
Yeah,
Jonathan. We all feel sorry for you.
I know it's such a weird thing to complain about. Well, the way my wife initiates is by yanking on it, like someone who would yank on a
Uh,
tiger's tail. And it's like, can you find a different way, a different signal? Because the signal hurts.
it's not
As
very
a
seductive, really. I mean, I
it's
guess,
very hard to be in pain and also be aroused for me. I'm just one of those guys. How do you, I want to go in another direction is like, how do you think you deal with you have kids, you're out of the relationship's over, your kid loves you, and then you start a new relationship? I think that it's so common now. We get remember when the
Yeah,
Brady Bunch was like a shock, and now it's like every single marriage seems to be a Brady Bunch.
because of the mixed siblings,
Yeah,
different marriages,
yeah.
mixed family. Well, how do you deal with it? My mother used to deal with it like she would never want the man to stay over when we woke up. She didn't want him in the house. That was her rule. I don't know if it's a good rule, because the thing is, I was little and I would grow attached to the man sometimes because, they're her boyfriend. And after a while, it would be, I didn't have a real father and it would be somewhat of a father figure. Um, so that didn't really help prevent any bonding or attachment that I would develop, and then she would break up if that's what she was trying to do. Not really sure why that she had that rule, and I know that's a fairly common rule with single moms. I don't really understand it. I kind of do, but at some point, if she's with a guy and he becomes her boyfriend and they're an item, I mean, I think it's okay to wake up together and say hi, with your
Well,
kids.
okay, now I have a new question for you. A lot of single moms, we see them all the time. You see their TikTok videos. They go, "I'm not looking for a new dad for my kids,"
Yeah,
and I hear that and I think, well, that's messed up. I don't think that. Like, what are you doing? You're guaranteeing you're going to create a conflict because you're saying, I want to have some in my life that competes with my kids because they're not. If you have two people in your life, right, a child and a boyfriend, and they're not in a relationship with each other, that means you're always choosing to spend time with one or the other. They're in
so what is she
conflict.
saying when she says that? Really, what does she really mean? What's the subtext underneath?
That's what I want to lead to. There's two
I'm
possibilities. One,
enough for my daughter or my son. I don't.
well, that's one
They don't need a
possibility
father.
is then why do you need a boyfriend? And it's, well, because I want to get my physical needs met or my emotional needs met, and it's
Right.
selfish motivation. The second
Right.
possibility is she's lying and it's just a trap. I'll tell you that until you fall in love with me, and then I'll bring my kids into the mix. So
Yeah.
those are the two
It's
possibilities, and I
inevitable.
don't know.
If you have children, you're a mother, and you fall in love with somebody, and it's inevitable that he's going to become sort of like you can try to avoid it, but if you're together, you know, you're the two
I think it's
adults,
just
they're the
much easier.
kids.
It's just much easier to be careful about who you have kids with,
Yeah.
which no one does. People are not intentional. It seems like everyone has a kid. I remember I had a friend in high school who already had like a kid who was like several years old. That kid is probably in their 30s now or
Yeah, in
something.
high
It's like
school.
so.
That's amazing. I know. I remember that too. I had to. Well, let's go back to a question for addictions for a second. Um,
Okay.
I feel that addictions, um, they can be overcome fairly easily if people want to. But I think that people have emptiness in their lives that allow these addictions to take over. And that rather than just directly addressing the addictions, they need to address the emptiness.
So I think there's a spectrum of addiction as well, because just like there's like five levels of alcohol addiction, right?
Hmm.
There's a thing of like, oh, I drink once a week, and or then there's I drink when I get home every day, or there's I always drink until I pass out.
So masturbating
So
twice a week is not an addiction. Then this girl thinks it is.
no,
Okay, no, it's
masturbating
not clearly.
twice, masturbating 20 times a day for sure is somewhere in
20
between
times a
is the
day would
line
be
of
a
addiction
problem.
that I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think the part is like where you're for sure when you're doing things that are self-destructive, right? Like
So
when
when
you're,
it affects your life in a negative way. In other
yeah,
words,
like if you're
if
doing it in public, or if you're doing it while you're driving, which I
or
know
you're
guys,
drinking during the daytime, for example, if you're, then like that sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah, or if
Yeah.
it's anything you're doing where the line is probably earlier than that, but that's when you know for sure you have an addiction problem. When other people are having like conversations with you about it and saying, as soon as someone says, "I think you have a problem," you need to be serious about it. This guy doesn't. So this is the woman is
No.
abusing a really important conversation, right?
Yeah.
Which is where
I
someone
agree.
actually has an addiction.
I agree.
I've had to deal with that in my family where someone really does have a problem, and
Yeah.
to use it when someone doesn't have a problem means that then they go, oh, maybe it's not because people use it when it's not true. So she's really wasting it. I think that you have to have know where you are on the spectrum, and usually you can't look at it yourself. You have to ask someone else and say, do you think? Because there are a lot of people that I think drink way too much, but then other people think they don't have a problem. So I don't know. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like,
I know exactly what you mean. I have friends or a couple we get together with sometimes. One of the few people I actually like, and she tends to the wife she drinks, and she'll have another drink, and big glasses, and then she'll end up
of
getting very
course.
drunk by the end of the evening. Well, you know
Well,
what? That's not my problem. I just deal with it. It's like, oh well. I'm not happy about talking to someone who's drunk, but oh well, it's not my business really.
so I'm a
Um,
believer that you should always have a vice in your life because you need something like a release. You just have to choose what your vice is going to be. And this is something I'm figuring out right now because I don't gamble, I don't drink,
so
I
why
don't
do you need a
smoke.
vice? Why is that? Why do you need that? I'm not sure I get that.
You just need something that you do that's not, you need something that's like a release that's not like a benefit or a good thing. Do you know what I
Well,
mean? Like you just have to
everybody
have
has
something
like
you're doing.
a crazy thing. I mean, like, for example, where I am, some people are really into their boat. Like,
That's,
to put their money in
yeah.
the boat, to spend time with the boat. It's
Oh
like
my
the
gosh,
boat,
talk
boat,
about
boat.
advice. Yeah,
Yeah, there you
that's
go.
people who hate money.
Yeah, no.
Like,
The happiest day of your life when you get the boat, and then the even
you
happier
sell
days
it.
when you get rid of the boat. And
Yeah.
it's a
The
hole in the water where you pour money. There's all kinds of things about boats, but that's an example of something.
yeah.
I knew somebody that was into racing. I think we both know this person that's into racing horses.
Yeah.
That's his thing.
It's
Puts all his money into that.
a lot of guys get in really too into cars. I think that's a vice.
Cars is
In the
another
same way.
example. Yeah.
And they start spending like they'll buy like a $250,000 car and
And I
then
saw a guy 8 or 10 cars the other day, all old BMWs, and he's gonna fixing them up, or I don't know if he really is, but they're all parked all around. It's like, oh, I got
fixing them up
another
is
one.
okay. But it's a hot like so the spectrum of vice to
Huh.
hobby can be a little bit murky. I do think you just so I've gambled in the past, but like definitely don't want to get into sports betting. Like
You
that's
don't want to ever get into gambling as a vice. Really, you don't want to get into drugs or gambling or drinking as a vice. You don't want to get
they're
anything
just
very destructive
those are
behavior.
all a
That's
young
just
to me, those are all a young man's game.
well, because you die before you get old.
Yeah, I mean it's just like I went through a phase where I did a lot of narcotics when I was in college and stuff. It's just a thought now. So a lot of them are very make you get very self-reflective. So all you do, you'll find one thought and you'll think about it in a circle for 12 hours. So when you have no responsibilities, you can just think about the universe and like, wow, the universe is so amazing, or look at my hand. When you have responsibilities, all you think about is work or your kids or whatever. So it's not fun. If it's hard to explain it very well, but you just become obsessed with something that's not fun. It's just more stressful. And you just start thinking, what if there's something wrong and I can't help them because I'm doing this right now. I'm not in control. So when you do narcotics, you give up a certain amount of control, and it's a spectrum.
And by
Some of them
narcotics, by the way, just to clarify, you're not talking specifically necessarily about opioids or something. You're talking about drugs in general. Is that correct?
anything, yeah, the whole spectrum. I'm talking about anything
Okay.
from pain
Anything else?
medication
Okay,
to
got it.
too much Robitussin, everything
Okay,
along the spectrum.
okay. I wouldn't call it. Okay, okay, got it.
So anything, sorry,
Yeah.
anything illegal or anything naughty. I don't know. I thought narcotics includes everything naughty, but yeah, I'm not talking about a specific classification. But any of that stuff, you're giving up an amount of control. And then,
Yeah. Right.
especially for people like us who are business owners and parents, like you just can't be out of control when your kids might need you or there might be a work emergency, whatever. So just your
Well, I
responsibilities
mean,
change.
you just
And
can't live that
gambling,
way. It's a terrible way to
it's a
live.
lot easier to gamble when your parents give you the money than when you make the money yourself. Like it's just you think
Well,
about money differently.
it's totally. These are just various roads to self-destruction. So,
I'm not into gambling. I think gambling is a terrible one
yeah,
because I
terrible.
mean, I don't have the desire to gamble like some people have. I've only ever played craps. Craps is a game of math. You can really control it. It's not fun. So if you play long enough and play very conservative strategy, you can break even.
Yeah,
So I'll play for
maybe.
2 hours, and
Yeah,
sometimes I'm like, I need $5, and I'm like sweating, but it's all
yeah,
math. It's fun at the end of it. And I just realized like and I've only done it like 2 or 3 times in my life. It's okay if a bunch of your friends are there, but I would never like you
right.
don't put a ton of money on the table. Like people are betting. I'm betting
That's
like what's
assuming
this?
you have friends, by the way.
Yeah. So I mean the odds are against you over time, but it's like 51 to 49. It's the only one where your odds are almost even if you just bet the pass line. As soon as you start doing other stuff, the odds go collapse. And a lot of people do
Yeah,
that. But
yeah.
I like it because it's a social game. You're playing with your friends. You're controlling your budget. But nobody else plays like me. I'm the only one sweating there, treating it like I'm at work because I'm like, that's real money. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
want
pretty
to lose it.
grim. It sounds pretty grim, really.
Well, that's why do you
It's
think
the
I haven't done
opposite.
it in 10 years?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, so I want to move on to a different question now.
Okay.
And this is a question that the other day, we were near where I live, we were walking downtown, and we counted baby carriages that had dogs in them
Oh,
and
gosh.
baby carriages that had babies in them. I've told you this before that many people carry I'm not sure why, they carry their dog in a baby carriage. There were about 10 dogs to every baby.
Yeah.
And so we are experiencing a tremendous baby bust. Like the replacement to keep the population even would be 2.1,
Right.
children per person, but it's zero point 0.8 now. There's a complete bust. And you meet a lot of people in their 30s or 20s, and they say, I don't want to have kids. I'm never going to have kids. So here it is. I recently got engaged to my fiance 2 months ago. Everything was okay, but oh boy, she loves these two dogs and a cat. She calls them her fur babies. I like them, but I don't consider them kids. They're not my kids. I have a 3-year-old niece who adores me, and she was left with my fiance and me for a few hours while my sister and her husband attended an event. And during a movie, my fiance asked me, I guess they're talking during a movie, who I would save first in a fire. Her, my niece, or her dogs. I told her I would do my best to save her and my niece first, putting my own life at risk. And then, and only then, would I try to save the dogs. She got mad, saying that I
Yeah.
was putting my niece above my own family and that if I loved her, I would value her dogs as much as I value her. Since then, she's been giving me a hard time, acting differently with the dogs, trying to take me out of the equation when it comes to their care. She said she's just not sure she wants to marry me anymore because I don't value her fur babies.
So this woman has a mental health problem, and that's the best way to say it. She
Oh
has
my
a
God. But it's
a
common. It's common. It's common.
so yeah, so I had someone who I did a business call with a few months ago. They reached out to me, did a call, and he was like, so he's like, here's the question I say to everyone to determine if I want to do business with them. He goes, if I see someone a stranger walking down the street, and a car is going to hit them, and the person's walking their dog, and I can only save them or the dog. He goes, I will 10 times out of 10, I'll save the dog. And
Hmm.
if you live, I'll bring the dog to the
Shocking.
hospital. And if you die, listen, gets worse. That's not the bad part. He goes, if you
Hmm.
live, I'll bring the dog to the hospital, and if you die, the dog will have a good home. And he goes, I don't want to do business with people who would want me to save that. He goes, most people say, why wouldn't you save me? And I'm sitting there thinking, how do I get out of this conversation? This person's a terrible person.
Loony and a bad person.
So where I live in a third world country. A dog is really your emergency food supply. So if it hits the
Yeah.
fan, you have an emergency supply of meat. That's how people see it. A lot of people don't even name their pets here. So this is a complete opposite perspective of Americans who I see, like when I see a dog in a diaper, like I saw a dog in a diaper in the mall, and
Hmm.
that's when you know the
Hmm.
person has like it's it's not just that they have a mental health problem, it's that they don't understand the nature of a dog. Dog is meant
Um,
to act like a dog, not ride in a carriage, right? It's no longer being a dog.
well, I
So
think they're sublimating their feelings and desire for having children into their
I
animals.
even
That's
if
the
it's
problem.
even if it's hurting the dog is what I mean. So it's the same
Right.
people that
Right.
put a dog on a vegetarian diet and the dog dies
Hmm.
because they're trying to make it into something that it's not. So if you take a dog and you don't let it walk, you keep it in the carriage, that means it's not getting any exercise. That's bad for the
Yeah.
dog.
It's
The whole
crazy.
reason that you take a dog for a walk is the dog needs to walk because to stay healthy, because dogs need to exercise.
Well, let's forget the carriage for a second. I mean, the point is that all these people are having dogs instead of children. They're much easier to have than children,
Yeah.
much simpler. They
So
don't give you a rough time. Of course, it's not really children, so that's the
it's
point.
a
And so
magic.
people pretend they're children.
Why not just push? Let me ask you this. How would you feel if you saw a man and a woman pushing it around and instead of a dog, it's just a doll?
Oh. I would think that they're even more loony than the people that
It's
are pushing their
To
dog
me, it's the
around.
same. It's not that different. It's something you're pretending it's
Yeah,
live. At least it's shaped
yeah.
like a baby, right? You know what
Well,
I
you're
mean?
pretending it's your child. That's what you're saying. You're
Yeah.
pretending it's your child. Yeah,
When people
yeah.
tell me when they call their dogs their children, it's a good way for them to let me know that I don't want to be friends with them.
Hmm. That's
Same thing
handy,
like
isn't it?
it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Same thing like having a bumper sticker. It lets me know that I don't want to be friends with you.
Well, I've noticed that when people do feel like they're babies, I notice that they don't stay friends very long. So I guess you're right. I mean, they don't want to be around me. So for the record, I believe in the value and the sacredness of human life, and I would always save a person over an animal, just like
Yeah.
that guy said. I would save her niece at risk. I wouldn't go into a burning house to save a dog if I had a risk of dying in the house. That's crazy too. I
I
mean,
wouldn't even go into
ultimately,
a hot house to save a dog.
we're not. I mean, we're not. Animals are animals. We're people. There's a big difference. So
Yeah, people
yeah,
who project. So for me, this guy is so lucky to find out before the wedding that
he's
is
really
this woman is
lucky. Yeah,
terrible.
he's. Thank you for letting me know how crazy you are. You can imagine getting married to somebody who values
I
her
mean, she's
pets more
already,
than people. Nuts.
there's the stereotype of the old cat lady. This
Yeah,
is
the
where they
hoarder.
come from. They start out as cat
Yeah,
young ladies. So she already
yeah.
has. I mean, I don't really like people that have cats. It's usually a sign that they want to have they want to
Well,
be in a
okay.
relationship with
A
someone who doesn't
cat
like
and
them.
cats are very different.
Well, cats don't like you.
Well, a cat.
Cat,
I can understand a
like a
cat
cat
because
will
it's a
tolerate
cat.
you, where a dog at least gives you an affection.
Well, but a cat is can be nice, but someone who has cats, different story, right? I mean, they're kind of messy,
Yeah,
smelly when they're.
yeah, they poop.
I don't know.
At least a dog will poop outside.
Yeah, I mean, why don't you go ahead? Do you have an issue we can discuss and a question? Because I sort of monopolize that.
No, those are great. So I've got one that's kind of interesting, which is I'm in my 40s. I'm a widower. My wife was in a coma for a year and a half before she passed, and I took care of her, yada yada. My daughter is 16. When you know, after my wife passed, I finally met someone else, and I met someone, I was dating this another woman who's similar age to me, and she has a daughter, I have a daughter, but then my daughter just hates her
Yeah.
and always hiding stuff,
Hates
starting fights.
hates the woman or hates the woman's daughter.
Hates
I'm
the
not
new
sure.
woman,
Right.
hates who's trying to replace her mom. They're
Okay.
always
Right.
fighting.
Right.
She's
Common.
defending her
Common. Common.
territory.
Sure.
And then, but even after all that, my fiance made my daughter a bridesmaid. And then so she gave her a job to go pick up the wedding dress or whatever, and then the daughter destroyed the wedding dress on purpose.
Sure.
So like she poured coffee all over it, she had the dog chew on it, and then the fiance called off the wedding.
That's a little extreme.
So I'm furious at my daughter, right? And I'm like,
Well, why did you call off the wedding? Really? You have a child that is emotionally disturbed who really needs help,
well,
and
so
I mean, I don't know if that's a reason to call off a wedding. It's just something to
I
understand that
think that
there's a
the daughter has a reasonable position in the sense that she needs help to get through this. So it
yeah,
sounds like the daughter, look,
right,
your mom, it's not a divorce, your mom died. That's a really big deal. Year and a
yeah,
half
a year
coma
and a half in a
thing, all,
coma. That's a terrible,
and then dying.
terrible thing.
So the daughter, it sounds like, is not over the trauma, which is not
Right,
unreasonable. And you have to deal with that separately, right?
right.
And putting her in this situation, I think that they just, to have her pick up the wedding dress and whatever and put her in this situation where she's like, I'm not over my mom dying. And it sounds like she's not, the dad is like not, he's like thinking about his own feelings, which I get, but he's also not thinking she's in a complicated trauma. This is something where I would say you bring, I'm not often one to recommend therapy, but this sounds like a legitimate situation because it's
Sometimes
very
children
complicated.
they do need help, and they should go. The three of them should go, and they can sort
Yeah.
of. It's
Well,
not
I
an
think the
easy thing.
daughter, I think you have to deal with the daughter's issue with her mom being gone first. Very legitimate.
Yeah,
Totally
yeah.
legitimate. The second thing is because she hasn't, everything else is happening because of that. She still misses her mom. She felt like her dad starting dating too soon. The other thing is, hey, dude, how about you just wait 2 years? She's 16. In 2 years, she'll be 18. She'll be in college. The problem solves itself, right? So I think
Well,
that like, that's what my
well, I
thoughts.
don't
It's not
agree with
like it's
that. I don't agree with that. If he's met somebody and they're very happy together, good for
yeah,
him.
but I'm just saying like they're getting divorced. It's not like the daughter's 6 and they have to deal with 12 years of it, right? It's just
Right,
like
right.
so I that's my other thing. I think that the I understand why she called off the wedding because she's like, this is never gonna stop. I'm gonna live in the house. I don't want to. Would you want to live in the house with like someone pranking you all the time? That's what it kind of is like. So I get that, but
Yeah, I see what you mean. Hmm.
yeah, and then he's he's like the dad's response is to like really punish the daughter. Like she's not allowed to have any friends. She's not allowed to have a boyfriend. She's not allowed to do this. She's not allowed to, and it's like
I
sometimes you
wouldn't do
have to
that. I
think,
wouldn't do that.
why is my child acting out?
Yeah, there's a
So
reason. She's
there's
not an evil
sometimes your
person.
kid is
She just.
just being bad and they need to be trained not to misbehave, right?
Hmm.
This is obvious. There's obviously something else going on here, which is like it's not like it's hidden. It's not a mystery in this case. It's like, oh, my wife died, and my daughter's really upset. I'm gonna ground her.
Yeah.
So I think that he's really. Let me see. Okay, so his daughter. Oh, he said my daughter was doing grief counseling through the school's service, but she quit in midway. I tried to make her go through it again, and she said they're just trying to get her to accept the unacceptable, which is my new fiance. Okay, so
Well, you're
he did
right.
try
I
to
think
take
in
her to
two
therapy
years
three
to
times,
wait,
and she won't
they
do
can
it.
wait to get married. They can still see each other. They don't have to live together until she's 18. And you're right.
Yeah, I wish I'd forced her to do therapy. Well, that never works. So
Also,
people have to.
sometimes people like think they're going to check the box, the therapy box. In this case, like, well, the school had grief therapy. We checked the grief therapy box. Like, I don't think
Tried three
that's
private
right either.
therapists though, and that didn't work too. I just think that
Yeah.
yeah, it's very hard to make people go through grief at different paces, and it's a very tricky
Hmm.
one. So I think that yeah, I mean, I would just wait for her to go to college. You know what I
Well, it's a
mean?
good idea. It's a good idea.
And what the daughter really needs is not a new mom. She's old enough that she doesn't really need a mom. What she needs are
No,
other relationships in her life, other friendships, and other adventures and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I think
no.
about it. Is that you have to, as a
Sometimes
parent, your
the husband's
responsibility
married.
is your kid first until they're 18, and then they're on their own. So you've
Sometimes
got
the,
2 more years
the,
of that
the
to be who
father's
you
married
are.
someone very young. See, I don't know if
Uh,
you have the age here, but
no,
like
it's
it's a
not.
okay.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's what I
she's
what
22. The so-called stepmother's 22, and she's 16. That sort of thing. That can create a lot of resentment.
yeah, I'm not don't think of me as your stepmom, think of me as your new best friend.
Yeah, I know. Well,
Maybe that
there's
would be better.
definitely that is better. She
At
isn't a
least you're not trying to
stepmom.
replace her.
She's not. She's her father's fiance, and I think that's something that can be explained and worked out, and she could become the girl's friend. And I think this event of destroying the wedding dress indicates her anguish, and it shouldn't be anything she's punished for. So
Yeah.
so what about this? What about a relationship where they find out they're together for a while, they talk about plans, and the man, he says, I always wanted kids,
Uh-huh.
but she doesn't. And that's fair. But I really, really want kids. Now, here's the thing. I own the house that we live in, and everything is fine. I'm in love, but I don't really know if this is gonna work out. I really want kids. She doesn't, and I feel like she's holding me back. Um, how do I approach this?
Okay. I'm going to say something that I want everyone to listen to. When people tell you who they are, listen to them. If someone tells you, I'm a lawyer, don't be surprised if the next day they're a lawyer. If someone says to you, I never want to get married, 2 years later, don't be surprised if they say, yeah, I told you I never want to get married. If someone says, I never want to have kids, they probably never want to have kids. You cannot convince people to change who they are on a core level. I understand people change their minds sometimes. I thought I would never get married. I got married. So yeah, it can happen. But this
Wait.
idea,
You were never going to get married, and you got married. I know you got married, but you were seriously, you never thought you were going to get
I told
married.
my wife, yeah, I don't think marriage, especially in the Western countries, I think marriage is no longer what it's meant to be. And I said, listen, if we're together, we're forever. I don't really need the government to put a blessing on it or whatever. Like I don't
Yeah,
need the
but
government
then you
law.
change. You're a complete example of the opposite of what you're saying.
Yeah, don't bet on that, okay? Because I also know a lot of women who have relationships with guys who said the same thing on the first date and then they never got married.
I know, but
So
but but the mind can be changed. That's the problem. Is there's always the possibility that the
yeah,
person's
so if you
mind will be
want to,
changed.
yeah, if you want to gamble your life on the possibility, didn't we just talk about how gambling is stupid? Sorry, didn't we just discuss that 30 seconds
Mhm.
ago?
Yep.
So the odds of someone who going, I don't want to have kids, change your mind, I want to have kids, is 1 in 1,000. Those are bad odds. We wouldn't do anything that's 1/10 of 1% or 100th of 1% or even 1%. So when someone tells you something that is the opposite of what you want, jump ship then before you form the emotional relationship. That's
So
the
when do you
secret.
want to have this discussion
First date.
with a girl? Hmm?
First date.
First date. Really?
Once you're 30, first date.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I told my wife, I have someone in my life who the guy she's been with for 20 years, on the first day he goes, I'm never getting married. My parents got divorced. There's no way. 20 years later, she's like sending him pictures of rings. He goes, oh my gosh, did someone propose to you? That's amazing. And because he's like, he did not hide who he is. So yeah, I know both ends of the scenario, and it's just a bad bet to bet that the other person's going to change their mind. My wife had already accepted that we would never get married before we
I tell
decided
you
to get
what,
married.
though, there's a gender difference. I think that a lot of men think they don't want to have kids, but they can be convinced, and then they love the fact that they're fathers. Whereas women who say they don't want kids, I think you have to believe them. I really feel there's a difference because men naturally
Yeah,
can be
probably
afraid of
true.
fatherhood temporarily. Yeah, I know lots of men who said they didn't want kids, and then they had kids, and they love them. Number
Yeah.
of men, but
I'll,
women not so much.
I just, when someone tells you something and you ignore it, it's your own fault, right? Like she
Yeah,
told him up front, I don't have kids. How do I convince her? You're not going to.
yeah, no,
It's
you're
like
not
you
going
can't
to.
convince
And he
the
mentions
other
owning
one.
his house. I was puzzled about why he mentioned it, but then he's explained that he's really thinking about breaking up with her, and he doesn't know if she could be living on her own. So he's kind of concerned about her welfare.
But so
For
she's a
if he,
child too? She doesn't know how to live on her
well,
own? Sounds like he already has a kid. Yeah.
what's the next one?
So I have the chance to date my old high school crush, who never gave me the time of day in high school, but I'm engaged. What should I do?
Should drop your fiance and have a date with this guy. I mean, satisfy that. He's probably been eating at her the whole time, since she left high
But yeah,
school.
there's nothing like when you break up and then you realize the high school crush wasn't what you wanted. You come back and go, cheating on you made me realize how much I love you, because people love to hear that sentence. That's one of people's favorite thing. I didn't realize how much I love you until I cheated on you. Thank you. That's the best thing
So
to hear.
really, this could strengthen her existing relationship.
Yeah, because you know what? There's one thing I know is that your high school crush is exactly like you've always imagined them to be like. Your high school fantasy of what that person's like, it's going to be exactly what they're like 10 years later. I mean,
Um,
I had a
well,
crush
I
I
read
had a
this
crush on her
as
all the way in
somebody.
middle school.
I,
Because if
I
you just
read this as somebody who's really not ready for a marriage. Really.
to even ask this question is so dumb.
Yeah. Well, they're not ready. The answer is you shouldn't be getting married because you're not really sure what you want to do in your life, and
I can't
you need to
decide
have.
which word makes me the maddest, if it's fiance or chance to date. I have a possibility of dating someone who I don't know, but I have a fantasy about who they are. No one is ever like what you imagine them. Whenever you get the crush, you always find out, oh my gosh, they're not like I imagined they would be. What a
There's a
dummy.
good reason why you're not with them now.
Yeah.
Well, so there's a man here. I want to ask you this. They she has friends and family. We had a question similar to this recently, but this is a little different. I get along great with her family, okay, and all of that.
Okay.
But I have hobbies and interests outside of that. But she is really not supportive of my having friends at all. She doesn't think I need friends. She says, "You're a man. You don't really need friends. I have, we have my family and my friends."
Break up.
So, I'm not really keen on that. I don't really understand. How do I get her to understand that I need friends
Nope.
too?
Break up.
She won't
She just
understand.
told you who she is. She's a cult leader.
Cult leader.
She's using the bite method. I is isolation. I don't
Isolation.
want you to have any relationships that I'm not in control of. Get out of the house. So if you get a phone call and you notice it's coming from downstairs, get out of the house. That's what this is. It's very clear what it is. And just get out. That's the simplest way to do it. I think that whenever someone tells you they want to be, and it's usually the man who's doing this to the woman, so it's interesting the reverse. They want to control your friendships, and they don't want you to have any friendships that they don't approve.
Well, you remember they moved back to her hometown, so he's out of his element, and she has
Yeah,
an
this person,
infrastructure there.
right. So this person wants to really completely control you and get out of the relationship. It's the best thing I can say is because this person's not going to become a better person. Whoever people are, their personality only gets stronger over time. If this person
Well,
wants to
he
be
says he likes them, and they have a daughter. He has a daughter, and the daughter likes him. It's nice to get together, but he says he'd also like to have other people,
nope,
of his own, a
I
few
don't care.
friends.
I'm telling you right
Hmm.
now,
Hmm.
if you stay with this person, you'll be sending another letter in 2 years or 5 years saying I made a horrible mistake.
Well, I'm going to make a more practical suggestion. I understand what you're saying, but we have to deal with this, let's say, in a sense of, well, we shouldn't be telling everybody that to break up all the time. I've had people tell me that who listened. Um, I think he should just start making new friends. How does a guy make new friends? In this case, I think he has to split off. I mean, she's with her family. He'd have to do something like, let's say, in the morning, maybe early morning, Saturday morning. Maybe he can go play golf or
He's gonna have to sneak out.
uh,
I'm at work. He's
squash.
actually,
Not sneak out, but a couple hours. So, yeah, honey, I'm going to be leaving tomorrow, and I'll be back around
yeah, you
11. I'll
get into
see you.
racquetball or squash or
Yeah, right,
pickleball or skeet
right.
shooting or whatever, hide and go
Yeah,
seek, adult
that's what
kickballing,
I'm
whatever.
thinking. Anything really. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but when she shows up and makes a scene and says, "Hey, you're not supposed to have friends I don't approve of,"
Yeah. Well,
That's where I see this.
but by just doing
Am I
that,
allowed
you
to
say,
tell
I'm
them
going to be
right
doing that. I've said this before. I always think in every relationship there's a more dominant person. No, people don't like the word submissive, but there's a more dominant person, and there's nothing wrong with it being the woman or the man. I mean, it's fine. More often the men are more dominant, but it doesn't have to be that way. In this case, she sounds like she's dominant, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have a life, and he has to stand up for himself and do what he needs to do. He may not be married to her that much longer, and he needs to have friends. So,
Yeah.
what's the next one you have?
So my wife is 2 months pregnant and tells me that she wants to
Okay.
move back to another city. So he met her when they were on vacation in Chicago, but they live in Fort Lauderdale together. We've been married for 5 years. It's been great, except for the past 5 years, she's been actively throwing tantrums about living here and constantly makes me feel like I'm hurting her by not giving her desire to live in Chicago, where she can be close to her family.
So basically, she feels isolated in Fort Lauderdale and wants to move to Chicago because her family's there.
She constantly puts down my small family who've been kind to her and claims that the only friends she's made were from her school program. Yeah, so
I
besides this, our
believe her.
marriage is solid as a rock. This guy doesn't know what solid means. This is my thing.
My
Is
wife
people
is very unhappy all the time, but our marriage is solid as a rock. That's what he's saying.
other than the
She's so
one
unhappy, she wants to move, and yet it's solid as a rock. How does that work?
only the one core issue, and he's like, it's really weird. She suddenly wants to do the thing she's been trying to do for 5 years. You have you have two choices here: move or don't move,
Well,
right? And it's
yeah.
like she
Well, there's another choice. You could,
divorced. You just
if
told
you
me not to recommend breaking up all the time. That's
no. There's
obviously
another
my first
choice.
choice.
There's another choice. I have
Long
two
distance
homes.
marriage.
If they have the financial means, I have two homes. My wife likes it in one place more than the other. I like it in the other place, so we just split our time.
So, his whole thing is that I have a
Maybe they can spend a
job
few
here.
months in Chicago a year. Maybe that's my point. Maybe they can do summer in Chicago every year or something for her. I mean, they don't necessarily have to move, right? There could be other accommodations, couldn't there?
Yeah, I just think that this isn't a case again of where people don't discuss before they get married and have kids. Like you should have had this conversation. And
She might not have realized how isolated she would feel in a different city,
no,
though.
she's been saying it for 5 years from the very
No,
beginning.
I know,
She's like,
but when they got married, she may not have realized it when she got married that she would be isolated. I mean, it's quite common for people to feel like they would be okay in a situation, and then they realize they're really not okay in it once they're in it. And I also feel that for women, sometimes their family and friends are more important than for men. That's certainly the case. And we've talked about this, but like my wife has a very, very physical need to have friends that she can get together with. I don't really care about that personally. I like to have friends I can talk to on the phone. We don't
I
use a
mean, would you
phone,
rather
but
live, but to live on the beach or live in like nightmare Chicago? Like, I mean, it's such a crazy, it was an easy one. I've
yeah,
got one for
but
you.
that's her family is. Okay.
Yeah, her family sounds terrible. Kidding. Here, I've got one for you that's pretty interesting. So my childhood best friend ended up marrying the guy I fell in love with. So this is
Hmm.
an interesting one. So my best friend is the person I went to for advice. I was like, I really like this guy. He's so amazing. I have feelings for him. And then the best friend goes, I've done this before. I've been the friend in this situation where someone came to me for advice and then the girl ended up liking me when I was 15, not when I'm 30. She goes, now I don't want to be around them ever again and they're calling me immature. Do you think I'm being unfair?
No,
If you,
not being unfair. It's your feeling you had a deep emotional connection or feelings about somebody, and
well,
she's
would
not
you
with
want
you
to be
anymore.
best friends with someone you knew that was constantly trying to break you and your wife up so they could sleep with your wife? Like, why would you want
I'm
that
going to
person
say,
alone?
I mean, it's difficult to say, but I'm going to say no. Um,
Yeah, get out. Don't,
I
you
think
don't,
that one thing that you don't want as an adult is you don't want to be in a situation where you're constantly feeling unhappy about something. It's like something in your shoe, that's hurting your foot every
yeah.
time you walk, and you don't want something like that irritating you all the time. Really,
Life is
I can
hard
see this.
enough. Why make it
Yeah,
harder?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
I have a question here of the situation. This is very, very common, and it certainly is common in my family in some ways. You know how people get in a financial pickle and then they end up wanting to borrow money or they need money. Now, I have another borrowing money thing that came up with somebody that I know, but this particular situation is that I have an older sister. She doesn't work. She doesn't want to work. And she's always asking me for money. And my parents are upset with me because I stopped lending my sister money. She never pays it back. My parents are really mad at me. They said, "You have the money. You should help your sister out." And I go, "I don't want to right now. I'm done with that." And they go, "Oh, no, you should be helping her out." There's a whole story about that. But they said, "You lack
easy.
empathy. You
Nope,
should be
cut off the
helping her.
parents.
She's your older sister."
Yeah, so these parents have failed. You get this sometimes where parents clearly like one child over the other, and they'll let one child be bad, and then make the other child who's doing the right thing suffer for the other child's poor decisions. This is not that uncommon, and the best thing to do when your parents have a favorite child and it's not you, the best thing you can do is just separate yourself from that. Say, you know what, guys, listen.
Well, my point is this. It's actually
All
quite
right.
healthy. Sometimes you have to be okay with people not approving of you or what you're doing. Sometimes you have to do something that people aren't going to like, right? And that makes you a
Yeah,
better person. That makes you a stronger person, especially as a man. So, your family is unhappy with you. They don't like you. You're a bad person. You live with
yeah, I
that.
don't
That's
care.
cool. I don't need the approval of my family. I'm a grown ass man. I don't need their
Yeah.
approval.
Say, I'll say, listen, if you're gonna ask me for money all the time, don't. I'm just not gonna talk to you. I'm not interested. And your parents think
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys give her the money? How about that, you two?
Yeah.
You're older than
Right.
me.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys step
Yeah.
up? And if you don't, oh, you don't have the money too? It's just like this. It's very strange to me that a lot of parents like, why do my kids never talk to me? And then you can kind of figure it out, like solve the mystery. But it's like, yeah, because you're a. This is what I'm talking about when I judge other parents. These are bad parents.
I always tell people this. I'm always grateful our children still talk to us. Not. I mean, I think we were reasonably good parents, but I don't take that for granted. Everybody's
Yeah,
kids can
I know a lot.
can
It's so common. And then at least here he's got a
estrangement.
pretty legit reason. His parents sound awful. His sister sounds awful. Like just get a new family, man.
A lot
Divorce
of
your family.
men tend to lose contact with their kids, especially when they get divorced, and I think that's
Yeah.
terrible. But
Well, a
yeah,
lot,
yeah.
I agree. That's why I was not into marriage. Let me do.
So
Here's what I
before
think you're gonna find interesting.
okay, great.
I got a special one for you. I have prosopagnosia, also known as face blindness. My
As do I.
boyfriend likes to test me. How do I make it clear to him that this is not okay? I'm 25, he's 24, right? We've been together for almost a year. He loves me too, I'm guessing. But there's one thing that's causing a lot of issues.
I'm guessing.
So,
Testing her is causing a lot of issues. So prosopagnosia is something I have. I'll tell you about my world. I didn't
well, that's
realize
why.
that this was some that I had happen.
So,
That's why, yeah. So when I was in school, like even elementary school, people would say, "Oh, hi, Matt," and I wouldn't know who they were, and it was so embarrassing. So that I stopped like developing new friends because like people would get upset I didn't know who they were, and it wasn't that I forgot their name; it was that I didn't recognize them.
right. Well, here's
And
what this
it
guy
was
does.
okay. Tell me what
This
he
is
does to
worse than
test
what
her.
you're imagining. Here's what he'll do. He'll shave his beard, change his style of
Oh
clothing,
no.
change his
Oh come
hairstyle,
on.
not tell her, and then see how
Oh,
long it
that's
takes
evil.
her to figure out who this guy is.
See,
And he'll even
I
tell
would,
her a different name. He'll be like,
oh,
I'm not your
see,
boyfriend, I'm Tom.
I would fall for that. I would fall for that. See, I would and it's hard for people to imagine what this is like, but that's exactly what it's like. So when I
That's
watch a movie, I have to ask my wife is that so and so, because it's in the last scene because she's dressed differently. The actress is different in this scene, and I only knew her because she had the red dress on. Now she's got a white dress. I don't recognize her. So it's I had nieces that were two girls. They don't look anything alike. I'm sure. I never could tell them apart.
so
So I think that man is evil. I think that's very, very destructive and it's veiled hostility that has to do with some kind of unresolved conflicts in his maybe with his family. Maybe his father was really beating him or whatever. Or maybe his family. Something is wrong
it,
with this person to want to give his girlfriend an trick her like that. It's a terrible thing to do.
he doesn't think it. I think that and this is why I thought this one was interesting. He doesn't think it's real, or doesn't, or as real as it is for her. So I think that's what's happening for him. It's like, oh, this is a small thing. These are funny. To her, this is very mean. You're making fun of like a major issue, which you resonate with.
It
That's
is.
why I thought this is interesting because I've I don't remember people a lot too. Like I don't have a justification for it. I just have a bad memory. And someone
I
we
just
both know
can't
is
tell them
talking.
apart. I just can't tell them
Right.
apart. So I
But I
tell people that now when I meet them. I say, if you say hello to me next time, I probably won't recognize you. I
yeah.
have prosopagnosia, so
Well, I always
doesn't mean I
just
don't remember you. I just don't recognize you.
well, that's why I always when I walk up to you when we're in person, I always go, "Hey, it's Jonathan." I always start with that because I just
Mm,
remember that. But
yeah,
and
I
I don't
appreciate
mind
that.
saying this is so. That's why whenever we're at a conference, I always try to tell you who each person is. I don't get it, but I get that that helps you. But
Yeah.
I can see why he thinks this is funny to play Where's Waldo with your girlfriend, but also to like have a stranger in the house. I get why he thinks it's funny, but I also get why it's not actually funny, is what I kind of
No,
mean.
it's not funny. It's only funny in a
It's
novel or in
really,
a TV show, a
it's
sitcom. It's not
right.
in real life. It's not.
It's not funny in real life. It's
No,
that's the thing,
it's
and
not.
it's. I mean,
And so 1% of people have this prosopagnosia. It's a real thing. I don't feel
yeah,
there's any solution to it. I've never found anybody that had any fix for it.
yeah. If he
It's
really
just that
loved
before
her,
I realized I had it, I thought that I was just so everything was so wrong, and it was so.
so
Imagine going and meeting people, and you don't know who they are. Just that's how your whole life is like that.
see, I see he to me, it's like I could just wear one outfit for the rest of my life, and that's actually helpful to her. I see it as such a win. You know what I mean? I'm thinking like, oh
Yeah,
my gosh,
it's
he doesn't.
easier.
As soon
You
as
can
your
wear
wife
the
is,
same black T-shirt, and yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
always
that's
wear
right.
this, or even wear a name like whatever. I would just always
That's a
wear
weird
this.
story. That's a weird story. So
I
I've
know
got
it
a
came
weird
up, and
story
I
here.
want to share it because it's so interesting.
It is interesting. I know people don't understand this. So this is what he says now. A lot of guys like girl on girl. It's kind of fun, right? As a guy, right? So he says, my girlfriend watches porn and fantasizes about doing it with another woman. Is this a problem that I can do something about? She says that yesterday I'm talking to her on the phone, and she says, "Oh, I'm, diddling myself watching, other women on." And I was very surprised and very bothered about it. And she sends me a text message because she realizes I'm bothered. She says, "I'm not interested in being with another woman. I just like to fantasize about it." But she also says she's been kissing with her friends, and she says it's just because she was drunk and they're just friends. And if some woman would ask her to have sex, she would just deny them. This bothers me. What do you think? Would you fantasize about such a thing if you don't wish this to happen? And my answer is absolutely yes. I've been as you know, I've been writing a book for a while on masculine maximizer, and I actually have a chapter on fantasy. And I think the biggest mistake people make about fantasy is that they think that it has to come true. What makes a fantasy cool is if you pretend or fantasize that could come true. Okay. But you never really want it to come true. Okay. And a lot of people use fantasy, and it can be a great advantage in eroticism and everything else. If you realize that it's fine to have any fantasy you want, and there's no relationship between having a fantasy and acting it out at all.
Well, but she's
There
kissing other
can
women,
be, but there doesn't have to be. Yes.
right? So until he said she's kissing other women, I was like, so
Just
there's three
friends.
movies.
And they're
You say
drunk.
that, and yet you've literally never kissed me. Does that mean we're not friends?
Yeah,
I
we were
do.
drunk together though. Yeah.
A lot of a lot of women. There's more of a thing where women will get drunk and kiss each other and whatever. It's more common than men. It just
Yeah.
is.
Well,
So,
attraction amongst women to other women is more common than it is for men to be attracted to other men. It's more
yeah, and then
common.
just like you just, it's the
I
same
can
thing where
understand why women are very attractive. Of course, you'd be attracted to women.
the woman, yeah,
They're
like
very
earlier the
attractive.
woman was jealous of what the guy was looking at in porn. Now he's jealous of what she's looking at. Would he rather? Let me ask. Let's just think. Careful what you wish for. Would he rather he comes home and she's just always watching a more attractive dude with a bigger penis? That's what would make you happy. If she's always
You
imagining
know,
a better
I
version of
can't.
you.
I,
Like,
I'm waiting for a problem to be here, and I don't see a problem. Honestly,
yeah, the
I
problem
don't
is
see a
that this
problem.
guy, when you start a relationship, you have to say, when someone says, I want to be monogamous, what does that mean to you? Does that include kissing? And you just have to sort of say, if you have to talk to her and say, if you kiss another woman, to me, that's cheating. If it is or it isn't, that's something you bring up at the beginning,
Well,
not whenever deep into the
again,
relationship.
again, I want to emphasize that it's perfectly wonderful to have fantasies, and to pretend that the fantasies are real makes them more powerful. But it's very normal to have fantasies, and they never come true, and they're never supposed to come true. And that's where
I
he's
mean,
making a mistake. He says, would you
yeah.
fantasize? Why would you fantasize about a thing if you don't wish it to happen? And I say lots of times people fantasize about things that are
How many
edgy or
times do you think
extreme.
people have fantasized about doing something horrible to their boss that they wouldn't
Right,
actually do in real
right.
life?
Yeah,
Yeah,
or off
there's a
themselves
wall.
or anything else. Yeah,
You
exactly.
just, yeah,
All sorts of things people think about. So what? And see, it's
yeah.
really important that you realize this, that it's just your thought, and it's perfectly fine to have thoughts. It doesn't make them real. And I think that's a wonderful thing to realize. That's why I wanted to bring this one up, because I like to people to realize that. I think it's really helpful to understand that, especially because we have a day and age where you're supposed to just somehow there's a cultural thing where you're supposed to make your dreams come true and pursue your dreams no matter what. And I'm saying, no, there's lots of things that are just supposed to be dreams. We're not supposed to make them real. It might be fun to pretend that we're going to make them real, but it's just pretend. And it's
And
perfectly fine.
this guy needs to read that Flowers in Her Attic book, and that'll really change his mind.
Well,
Man,
here's
the
an
first,
example. An example of this would be those first-person shooter games that usually men like to play.
oh,
There's
I
there's
love to play
there's
those.
no You're right. It doesn't mean that you're a person that's going to really do that in real life, but when you're doing it, it feels real in a way. In a way, it feels real. That's
Yeah,
what makes it fun.
yeah, I agree with that. I've got one that's the
Okay.
same in another direction. It's really interesting.
Okay.
So, woman and her boyfriend, they're both 34. She says, I'm at the mall with him and we're talking about height differences in couples, and me and him are about the same height. He's 2 inches taller than me. And then I was making a veiled comment that I think it's nice to be the same height as the person you're sleeping with. And he kind of theatrically started talking about how great it is to have sex with tiny women. And he was
Hmm.
gesturing very dramatically with his hands, and he likes to throw them around and seemed very excited about it.
Hmm.
This really triggered me, and I shut down. I honestly
Mm.
just wanted to get away from him. I was so hurt and angry. He could tell I was upset, and I let him know he really hurt my feelings because I have body issues and an eating disorder, which he already knew about. We tried talking about it a bit when I was driving him home, but I still felt incredibly hurt and have been very triggered since then. I don't know if I'm going to feel safe sleeping with him after this. It was clear this is his preference. He was denying in the car and said he just said it accidentally in the first person we met in general, so I got more hurt because I felt like he was being dishonest with me about to get out of the
So
situation.
basically, he was being super enthusiastic about this to a point where she saw the real the real man inside really wanted a woman that was small, and she wasn't small, tiny,
Well,
whatever, short.
what does
Isn't that?
so when he, I don't know what she means by tiny, and when you say tiny in my head, I'm thinking Oompa Loompa, like I'm thinking 2 feet tall
Well,
or a smart.
I
I
had a
don't know what
friend.
he means.
I
If
had
he
a
means
friend, and he
skinny,
told me this whole story about this. He called, and whenever we see a short woman, he'd call her a spinner,
oh yep.
and it had to do with a sexual
Oh, I
act,
know.
which I can't get
Don't
into.
worry.
So, yeah.
People are.
So he always
It's not
Yeah,
true.
I understand. I don't think it is either.
You can't actually do that. So I
Well,
think
it was like he was always saying you could, and you know what? Here's the thing: who is she with? Is she? I mean, who's he with? Right? Is he with a short girl? Or is he with her that she's the same size as he is? People are always like worrying about what someone else thinks, but what are they really doing? That's what counts.
yeah.
That's her boyfriend. He's with her. So what difference does it make if he fantasizes about a short girl or whatever? Good.
Yeah. Here's
Then
an
she can
idea.
tell
Don't
him
ask
some
a
stories when
question
they're
if
in
you don't.
bed.
Don't ask a question if you don't want to know the answer, dummy.
Well, yeah, yeah, exactly. But I mean, she can now she knows a core fantasy of his, so she can feed it back to him in bed, and she can get him more
Yeah.
aroused. It can be nice. It doesn't have to be anything.
Whenever
I mean,
people
it
start
doesn't
to say words like triggered and I
triggered,
don't feel
triggered.
safe,
Same thing. I thought the same thing.
whenever I hear those
Ugh.
words, listen, there's a situation where you don't feel safe,
Ugh.
and that's when someone pulls a weapon on you. So
We're the, you
people,
know what? It's we're the wrong age for this because don't we hear this all the time? Microaggressions,
yeah, people
triggered.
just
He made me
over.
feel. have
People are
body issues. How do you have body issues? I mean, I don't understand that. I can understand temporarily feeling something, but having something means that it's like a permanent state, which really bothers me. That someone, and doesn't
well, she
everybody
says
sort
she
of
has, I
have
mean,
body issues?
she if she has so she says she has an eating disorder, and there's two types of eating disorders: self-diagnosed and diagnosed.
Real and imagined.
Right, basically it. So if you've been to a doctor, because listen, I know women who've had it, and it's the real deal, right? Where you're so
Oh
sick
yeah.
you end up in the hospital.
Oh yeah.
Then there's just people who are chubby and go, I have an eating disorder or a thyroid disorder. Not the same. One is you know what I mean? What when a doctor says you have it versus you say you have it, very different. So I'm just suspicious because because the way she describes it, because she doesn't say which one it is. I don't know. But whenever people start to say, so I'll give you an example, like
I've got a
triggering.
touch of bipolar and I got a touch of
People
borderline
really,
personality disorder. You know.
people really abuse the word triggering, and
Yeah.
here's what triggering is. I had a high school teacher who had fought in the Vietnam War, and if you dropped your book on the floor, he would dive behind his desk.
Oh really? Oh, it's horrible.
That's the real deal, right? That's a real trigger. You could cause something real to happen. And there's a huge difference between that and what she's talking about here. It didn't cause an instant reaction. So she's really misusing the word triggering. And it's the same thing for me. Having been through a natural disaster for a while, if I would hear rain, I would get scared.
Okay.
So that's what I mean. A trigger is something happens and you have an uncontrolled response to it.
Yeah,
That's what
I
trigger
had been
is.
in a really bad fire when I was little, and then whenever I heard fire trucks, I would get hysterical.
Right. She's saying, oh, she didn't have a real reaction. She didn't drop to the floor or start throwing up to lose weight
Hmm.
instantly. So she's misusing the word triggering. She's using the trendy use of the word rather than the real use, and that's
Well, that's
important.
probably what she's been taught in school. I mean, apparently that's what they're teaching in school. There's no grit anymore that's being taught. It's not like, you know what I mean? They're not having people man up and deal with their own feelings and soothe themselves. They're encouraging people to blame other people for making them feel a certain
You
way.
had the eating
When
disorder before you met this guy. That means it's not his fault.
he's with her, that's my point. So here's a
He needs to
question. I
not
don't
be.
know.
This guy
Did you
needs
ever
to
watch
jump
that?
ship. She sounds terrible.
Yeah, I know. Did you ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Of course. It's like an older version of me.
Uh, it's the funniest show. It's just finished up. It's just finished the last episode for the last season. I'm sure it probably is. But there was a kind of a joke a few times about him having a boner when he hugged his aunt or something like that. I don't know if you remember that from earlier seasons. So she's saying here in this story, she says, my boyfriend, okay, he just gets these boners from like any cuddling or even a hug. It's like, for example, last night, you know, he was looking at a new game on his phone, and I wanted a little love before I went to bed as it was late. I told him, and he looked at me and gave me a smile, and he stood up and adjusted himself before embracing me, and I felt his obvious boner. Now, you know, he says, "Oh, I don't really feel like I'm horny. It just happens, and I can't control it." Is it true? What's
How
going
old is
on
the
here?
guy? Sorry, how old is the guy?
He is 27.
Yeah, I mean, so I still get the occasional involuntary one. Like sometimes you get one because you're too cold or it's windy. So
Right.
I mean, you wake up with one every morning, right? Like that's why it's
Hopefully,
called morning wood. That's
you're supposed to.
involuntary. So you don't always get them. There's not a one-to-one correlation between horniness and erections. There are
Yeah,
involuntary
there's not.
ones. They do happen. So
I
if
thought
that's her
that was
question.
funny that she would be disturbed about it. That was why I wanted to
I feel like a lot of
talk about this
people.
one.
So we one of the things about our culture is that we've shifted to where people want to be significant for what's happened to them rather than what they've done.
That's an interesting
So
observation.
I'm important because of the circumstance of my birth, or because this happened to me, or I have
Hmm.
this disease or that disease, and then now there's a whole thing of like, oh, it's not a disease, it's just a feature, right? And That's a new thing, which is like every disease is a positive. Whatever you have, it's good. We shouldn't try and cure any disease because it's your personality. And everybody wants to be famous. Everyone wants to be a social media star because those are people that are famous for being famous. And that's what a lot of these things are happening to, which is where they go, "Ah, I have nothing really bad has happened to me. So I'm gonna, maybe because one time my boyfriend got an erection for no reason, that can become what makes me special. So it's like people are desperately looking for a problem, and the problems they find are so dumb. And there are people with real and legitimate problems, and really bad things
Yeah,
happen to them.
that's a good point. Yeah.
And if that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you, how about just appreciating you have a blessed life? Wow, the worst thing that ever happened to you is your boyfriend once had an involuntary erection. How about a guy
Well,
whose
I
wife
think
was
it's
in a coma
nice.
for a year and a half? You know what I mean? Like
Well,
that's
I
a
think
thing.
it's nice. I deal with people all the time, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of men who don't have them, can't, or trying to get them back. I think it's wonderful. You know,
Yeah, look,
so,
it's careful what you
but
wish for.
yeah.
You think she would stay with him if he never got an erection again? No. Now she's suddenly got her wish, and now she's complaining about that too. People don't think about the law of unintended consequences.
So my world, this is something I don't think I've told anybody this, but I think sexual thoughts about things and people all the time. Rocks. It really doesn't matter. Everything is about sex with me. Unfortunately, that's um, they say people have a sexual thought every 3 to 5 minutes. I think mine are more often than that, but it doesn't mean anything. I'm not going to have sex with a rock, but I think about it. So what?
Um, yeah, people need to realize that thoughts are just thoughts and they don't matter.
Yeah, exactly what we talked about with the fantasy. It's just a
When someone's
thought,
like
is
penny for
all it
your
is.
thoughts, I'm like, no way. So you have to realize what matters and what doesn't. Actions matter. Let me give you a scenario.
I think he shouldn't be embarrassed. Okay, that's what we can agree on, right? He should
Oh
be
no, he should
happy
be
about
proud.
it
He goes,
and
look at
telling
this
her,
monster.
"Yeah, I'm going to take it out and show you right now."
He should have whomped her in the nose.
Why is he so embarrassed? He's saying he's kind of feeling embarrassed about it because she wants him to
Oh,
be embarrassed about it. He should be
I
proud of
didn't hear
his
that part. I thought he
what
was
he's
just
got.
adjusting his. Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's like, well, I no, it's embarrassing because it happened for no reason. That is embarrassing, right? It's like I remember I had one in math class in high school. I didn't stand up and go, guys,
It
check this
shouldn't
out.
be embarrassing. It shouldn't be embarrassing, honestly, because if it just happens and you have no control over it, then why would it be embarrassing? It's no different than anything else that just happens. I mean, I think it's something we could get over, maybe that we probably should get over.
I mean, it's not a big deal either way, but
Right? Yeah. By the way, but speaking of which, okay, this woman marries. I mean, she dates a guy, right? And about several months into the relationship, he says, "Hey, I need to borrow $1,500 because I'm waiting for a wire to get from
nope,
one of
break
my
up.
family members."
You're dating the Tinder swindler.
Tinder swindler's that a thing now?
Yeah, that's a guy who used Tinder to like steal $10 million from a bunch of different women.
I'm just shocked. She says, "Just how can you be comfortable asking, a month or so in and asking for that much money? And what is it? You have no savings? I'm pretty good with money, so I think that's,
Dummy, he's
that's why he
asking.
came to
You're
me."
not the only one he's dating. Here's the secret: he's dating a bunch of other women. This is a con man. Break
It's a
up,
con man.
dummy.
Yeah, yeah,
hundred
yep.
percent. A month in, you're asking for money. It's
Of
for
course,
sure
of
that's the game. You know what will
course he
happen then?
is.
It's oh, the wire got delayed, but actually I need another 1,500. How about 5 Gs? How about 10 Gs? What's your
Yeah,
social? Hey, what
yeah.
was your mom before your parent? What was your mom's last name before she got married?
She better count her spoons after he leaves the house.
Yeah, can I? Oh wow, look at this picture. Was this your dog you had as a child? What was his name? Such a cute dog. Writing it down. Like this and this is for sure a con man. Like it's
Con man, con man. Okay, so
she's so busy thinking.
before we
She's so busy
bef-
thinking, oh, how does he have no shame? It's like, no, it's his job. He's at work right now.
that's his work. Yes, that's right. As he's doing his work. Last thing I want to talk about is someone shared this. They said this idea that women have this belief that a woman shared. She said that women who prioritize careers over finding a partner and having babies are going to be miserable in 5 to 10 years. She
Probably.
says women won't give an attractive, kind man a chance if that man doesn't have a good career. Men are meant to be providers, and the man should make more than the woman. And feminism has brainwashed women, and their empowerment through their careers and showing their bodies will lead to misery. And the last one is women who have kids are happier, and you're wasting your time if you don't have kids or you don't want kids. What do you feel about those beliefs?
So what's interesting is that we've gone through like four waves of feminism, right? First, it was like right to vote, then it
Yeah,
was equal rights in marriages, and then it was right to work, and then it
yeah.
was like we
Well, the
want
pill,
affirmative action
right to
too.
the right to have sexual behavior like a man does, basically.
Right, and then it was we want to have more rights than men. We want to have the good jobs. We want
Hmm.
the good jobs to be split evenly, but not the bad jobs. You never hear
Yeah,
women saying 50% of bricklayers should be women,
they don't
50% of
want to go down to the coal mines. They don't
yeah,
want to
it's
go up window washers,
50% of
50
desirable
stories up
jobs.
there. I don't
Yeah,
want that.
and then everyone says that women should be in the military and they should be frontline, but not 50% of women don't want to be frontline soldiers. There's not enough women that want that desire, right, to hit that quota because not everyone wants to be shot at. It's not a dream job. We have this, but it's always like when it's convenient because right now more women than men go to college. Does that mean colleges should ad- artificially address and not let in as many women and let in more men just to keep the numbers even? But then suddenly they don't have interest in that. But the final form of feminism, which is interesting, is sex positivity. So the final form is that like women should enter the workforce and be sex workers. We've gone full circle to where 150 years ago when all women were stuck doing was working in brothels, and now we're back to it, which is OnlyFans, which is Fansly, which is all of this stuff. So it's really interesting that the final form of feminism is women doing adult work, which
Well, that was what we were supposed to all kind of prevent from happening in the past, right?
but
And the whole idea,
it's the final phase
yeah,
of feminism, and it's so
we were trying to protect women from all these things, and instead we've exposed them and encouraged them to do all these things. Well, I'll tell you what's interesting is this is I asked this to I put these into the woke AI, one of the AIs, and it said the idea that women who prioritize careers over a partner or babies that they're going to be miserable is just not supported by evidence. Happiness and fulfillment are subjective, which is true, and can be achieved through various paths, including career success, personal relationships. Claiming that women
it's
won't
not
give
true.
attractive, kind men a chance if they don't have a good career is another generalization. While financial ability, stability may be a factor for some people, it is not the only factor. I mean, this is all true, but I thought it was kind of humorous. It was, feminism is a complex social, political, and philosophical movement that advocates for gender equality. It's not about brainwashing women or promoting
Not true.
misery. I know that I
It's
disagree
not about
with. Yes, it
equality
is about
anymore.
that.
It's about equity. They don't say equality. They always say equity now,
No,
right?
right.
Equity is a different word. So there's two different things, which equality is there's nothing a man is allowed to do that's illegal for a woman to do, right? Women are allowed to vote, women are allowed to have jobs,
Right.
women are allowed to pants, women are allowed to drive. That's already we passed that law in the 60s. Fair enough. That I get. But now
Right.
you're talking about feminism now, they don't have that problem anymore, so they found a new problem, which is equality of outcome. And it's mathematically impossible to do because you can't have a perfect representation of society in every single job in every single sector because unless you're assigning jobs in which you go, oh, here's your job based on your race, this is your job because this is the slot we have open for someone that has your characteristics. It doesn't matter that you be bad at it, but you're the right race for this job. That's the final form of that, which is obviously it sounds ridiculous when you say that. And this so now the whole thing is it's the things they march for. It seems to be like again, it's always about leading towards sex work, which is like so amazing because that was not what people in the 60s wanted, right? That was not what they were saying back then. We want women to have jobs in the adult industry was not what they were marching for. So it's really been a shift. But the problem with the AI is that when you say give me your there are so many studies about female happiness and how female happiness has plummeted in the last 50 years.
Yeah, that's
Female
right.
satisfaction. There's tons of studies about that.
Right.
So when it says there are no studies, it's immediate. It's lying to you because there are a bunch of studies, and people
It's a
study this all
lie.
the time. People study all the time. Are women in careers happy? Or how do kids turn out? There's tons of studies on this because it's an important topic.
Yeah.
There are tons of
Right.
studies about how not having a father in the home it's the number one pre-indicator that a child will have a bad career, will go to jail, that will drop out of high school, that will not graduate from college. There's tons of studies on that. It's not a personal
Right.
opinion. It's data driven. So the
It
other
doesn't mean everybody without a father is screwed, or it doesn't mean that some
no, it just
women who
the
decide not
odds
to
are
have babies are
against
going to be
you.
unhappy, just as a generality,
Right. It just
right?
means the odds are against you. But this other thing
Yeah.
of like everyone who, you know, everyone who has a career, there's a lot of people who have a career, don't have kids, and they're very happy with that. Probably 10% of the women are happy with that, but not all. And I think that's the important thing is that you think we're told that things will make us happy and then they don't. And that's the lesson here. So there are some women who have a career, don't want to have kids, and they're very happy.
Right.
Totally true. But it's not
Yeah.
100%. There are also plenty of women who did that
Yeah.
and regret it because they write about it all the time. They
They
email
regret
us
it, and
all
the
the time.
clock runs out. It's too late. I would say that
I'm
that's
late
very
30s. I
common.
wish I'd had kids. There's a ton of women posting on TikTok right now that are going like, "What was I thinking? I hate my job. I just want to have a
Right.
relationship with someone who takes care of
Yeah.
me."
Yeah. They say, "Oh,
So,
I'm working for someone else." What I want to do is I want to be home with my kid and be supported by a husband, and they don't have that, and it's too late
so we've
because they
just
listened
decided that
to these
being a
people.
mom and being a wife is so bad that we discount it so much, right? Because people really
Yeah.
disparage being a mom, like it's not an important
Right.
job, and it's like, well, that's why I have a bunch of kids that stink. So you just ignore being how important being a mom is, but it's a really important job. So
Well, the solution is just don't have kids. That's what nobody's having kids
yeah,
anymore.
just
It's
shove a dog into a
you know.
wheelchair and pretend you have a dog, pretend you have a whatever.
Yeah, in a carriage. Yes, yes, yes. Well, we have come to the end of our time together. I think this has been absolutely fantastic. If you want to ask me a question or Jonathan and I, you can go to getrapidhelp.com and just ask Matt. Just type your question in, and we'll be happy to help you. Answer the question next time. And I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I hope that God is shining His light and love on you and your loved ones and family, and I believe that He is. And we'll see you next week. We're here every week. Hit like and subscribe. Tell the algorithm what you think. Write a comment, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.